Sometimes it's tough to find the right tools for the right job. This Kubernetes project is getting out of hand. Okay, I think I'm way out of my element here. Maybe my buddy Kaslin Fields from Google could help. Hey, Kaslin, great to see you.
Hi, it's been a while.
I know. A little while.
Not
while. Too long, really. Yeah, so I mean, I know it's a little weird for me to just kind of contact you out of the blue like this, but I need your help.
Okay, what do you want to talk about?
So I've been trying to stand up a Kubernetes cluster in my lab as part of our efforts to implement it in our production environment, but I don't want to put it in production, right? I want to set up a lab first. I'm having a lot of trouble figuring out the right tools to use. There's so many choices, and I found out that a lot of the resources out there are no longer even maintained. They have cloud dependencies. I just want to get this started and running so I can start testing it out for our environment. So do you have any tips for me? Where should I start?
Well, you have come to the right place. I'm always excited to talk about Kubernetes, you know.
I knew this.
So there are a few different options. Have you created a Kubernetes cluster yet?
No, I'm very new to this.
Okay. So there are a few different ways that we could start with this. There's MiniCube, there's managed Kubernetes services, and there's running Kubernetes from scratch the hard way if you would like to torment yourself.
So I am kind of a masochist. So tell me more about the hard way. Like, what are the benefits and what are the downsides to doing that?
Sure. So a very common way to get started with Kubernetes is to run a cluster from scratch, the hard way. And there's a guide on GitHub by Kelsey Hightower of the same name, Kubernetes the Hard Way. It's a really nice guide because it takes you through the steps of, creating the cluster from scratch. So you have to learn how the cluster itself works. If you actually want to end up running this in production at some point, the things that you learn through creating the cluster from scratch can be helpful, but running a whole cluster from scratch in production means that you have a lot of different pieces that you have to take care of. It's kind of like math in school, how you learn it the hard way first so you can do it the easy way later and understand the logic behind what's actually happening. That's usually kind of how the Kubernetes the hard way materials go, is you start with the hard way just so that you can learn how it works underneath, but actually running it in production, you probably want to use a calculator.
So it's interesting you mentioned math, because I remember I used to get in trouble with my teachers a lot because I would do the problems and get the answer, but I wouldn't show my work.
Yep.
So it sounds like maybe the hard way isn't necessarily the way I want to go here. So MiniCube sounded really cool. I mean, because it's mini, like, still, is it cute and tiny? Okay.
It is kind of. So yeah. The idea of MiniCube is that you run a Kubernetes cluster just on your local machine. So depending on what level of proof of concept you want to do, you might be able to do a little bit with MiniCube. It's usually used for things like if you're trying to run things on Kubernetes and you just kind of want to test out how it'll work, maybe on a different production cluster elsewhere, just kind of a local exploration environment. So I don't know if that's what you're looking for here, though.
Sounds like some drawbacks might be I'm limited to my resources on my laptop or desktop.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Probably can't tie it in really easily to my infrastructure that's already there. I'm guessing persistent storage might be a problem too.
Yep. And Kubernetes is really a tool for scale. It's all about these clusters, right, of many machines. So if you're running the whole thing on a single machine, there's a lot about that that's not representative of a real life Kubernetes production environment.
Have you ever seen anyone running MiniCube in production?
Only as part of like development environments. Like they'll have main production Kubernetes clusters, but then the developers who send things to that cluster might test things locally on MiniCube. So it's more like a dev test thing.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, so MiniCube maybe doesn't work out for what I want to do. So what I'm really looking for here, I think, is testing out scale, testing out performance, and testing out functionality of what I've got in my environment. So tell me more about the idea of a managed Kubernetes service. Like, what are some of the benefits and drawbacks of that?
Managed Kubernetes service is kind of in the middle here in a sense, because it's usually a fully featured Kubernetes cluster. Generally, a managed Kubernetes service will come from like a cloud provider. Each cloud provider has a different one. So at its core, it's Kubernetes, whether you use MiniCube or if you spin one up yourself. The ways that you interact with that cluster will be similar. But in the managed Kubernetes cluster, as opposed to spinning it up yourself, you have some partner that you're working with, like your cloud provider, who is managing those underlying pieces of the cluster for you. So like I said earlier, if you're running it yourself, there's a lot of pieces that you have to think about making high availability and ensuring everything is networked together properly and all of that stuff. But if you work with a partner that provides a managed Kubernetes service, they can do a lot of that stuff in the background for you so that you can just use the cluster itself. It has capabilities for scale. It's not limited to your machine like MiniCube is, but you still have less responsibility with regard to running the actual cluster itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sounds like it'd be really easy to spin up new instances, spin up new compute, add storage to it. I think the drawback might be cost, though. Like I'm probably looking at a daily runtime cost where maybe it's not going to be tenable for just a test environment. And knowing me, I'm probably going to forget about it and then a month later see the bill.
Yep. That is an issue anytime you're testing things in a cloud.
Yeah. So I guess the summary is, you have your hard way, which is really under your control. You learn a lot from it, but it's going to eat up a lot of your time.
Yep. You can also do it in a lot of different environments.
Yeah, exactly. You have MiniCube, which is going to be pretty simple to set up, and it's basically a way to learn the environment commands and that sort of thing, but maybe not so much for the actual functionality and moving parts, right? And then the managed services is a pretty good mixture of those two, and it's probably the best solution here for me, but I really got to watch those costs.
Yep. Especially if you're doing a proof of concept, you're going to have to pick one to start with, because you're going to have to choose which environment, which managed service you're going to go with, figure out all the unique things that managed service offers. And then from there, though, the actual testing out running a Kubernetes cluster part becomes a lot easier.
Do you have any other things I need to consider? Like, what are some important things I need to think about?
Yeah, so if your organization has an association with some cloud provider that they would prefer to use, you might want to look at that cloud provider's offerings. Azure, of course, has one as well. Amazon has one as well. They also have the Elastic Container Service, Amazon does, which is a similar way of doing the same thing, but it's not actually Kubernetes. So don't get confused if you start looking at Amazon's offerings. They've also got Elastic Kubernetes Service. So take into consideration what types of environments you want this to work with. If you're going to want to connect it to on-prem materials, if you're going to be mostly working in the cloud, look into what those different managed service offerings have in terms of connecting to other pieces of your environment.
I hear NetApp has some pretty good integration with these things. I'll have to give them a look.
You might have to check that out. I've also heard that they have some partnerships with some of these different cloud providers.
Okay, well, it's great. It sounds like I've got some places to look now. I can get started and start pounding away at this. I think we nailed this. Be sure to check out the next episode where I get a little anxious about the long-term viability of Kubernetes and get a special assist from Enrico Signoretti.